are very honored to be here. We're going to be covering it. It's a summit that's going to take place for the next 4 days.
Thank you, America First! Thank you, Stop the Steal!
With my sister Elizabeth Atkinson, we are at the turning point. Shlama, shalom, and salam to one and all. We are so happy that you are with us today. And you know, I always start out with the 3 Semitic words for the word peace. But in honor of our distinguished guest today, we want to say, and I hope I don't butcher this word, Berev Zas, which is the Armenian word for, I believe, greeting and hello. So I want to welcome all of you today to the program, as you usually do. Thank you so much. If you don't mind, before we begin or before we go on any further, we have such an important subject that we want to feature today, because not enough is being spoken about it in the media. As many of you know, that we call ourselves the voice of the voiceless, because we are not a sensational broadcasting system. We're not a network that is beholden to anyone. We're an independent voice. We want to bring you stories that matter to what's going on in the world. And unfortunately, unless it's sensationalized in the media, sometimes it's not being valued as worthy enough to be spoken about. And this human tragedy that is happening in the world today, today is one of those stories, and we are going to be talking about how history is repeating itself. All throughout today's program, you're going to hear her talking about things that are happening, but at the same time, we're going to be repeating this term, history repeating itself. With us on the program are 3 members of the Armenian community in Arizona, as well as members of the Parish Council of St. Apkar Apostolic Armenian Church in Scottsdale, Arizona. With us, and if we can show their beautiful picture, I'm reading my script. I'm not sure if they are. There they are. There are the beautiful faces that I want to show. I want to feature in the middle right there. You see is my brother Artin Knadjian. He's the Parish Council Chairman. Grigor or Greg Hakobyan is the Parish Council Vice Chairman. And Mary Sayadian is the Parish Council Secretary. To all of you, my brothers, my sister, thank you so much for being on the Mona K Show. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Worthy to mention, of course, Father Zacharia could not be with us. I know we advertised that he was going to be with us. Der Hayer Zacharia, Der Hayer is Armenian word for, I'm learning, guys. For Father is a respectful way that we refer to the priest, as we say in Assyrian, Rabbi, we say Der Hayer in Armenian. Who could not be here with us is family to our program and is our brother, as is our brother Artin, who, as you see, we know him as Art. In 2020, when this situation that we're about to talk about today, the Nagorno-Karabakh was attacked, we had Father Zacharia, Der Hayer, of course, and the other Greg, I'm not sure what his last name is, Art. Arbazian. He was on the program. That they did a wonderful job. Again, we featured the story as it happened in 2020 to discuss the beginning of the attack. And then, of course, today we are saddened by the current events that are taking place resulting in the dissolution of the Armenian enclave. And Art, I know you and I worked together during my radio days where you guest hosted the program, and maybe in the future we can collaborate once again to start again. So it's an honor, Greg and Mary, to meet you, and so glad that you are here today. Let's go ahead and get your reaction before we start with a video that I'd like to make a correlation between the Assyrian community and the Armenian community. There's no coincidence here. Something is happening. There's a greater plan that's happening, but I'd like to get your reaction, starting with you, Grigor. We're here to talk about the loss of Nagorno-Karabakh, which is known as Artsakh, to Azerbaijan, suffering the ethnic cleansing and the purging of the ethnic Armenians from the region. Let me first get your reaction and to ask you, did you ever think, even with the 2020 war that happened or the attack, did you think this day would come?
Yes, because I've been following news every day, and every day there was an escalation. Every time there were shootings, every time Azerbaijanis were increasing the number of military hardware on the borders, on the contact line with Armenia and Karabakh. And so it came to the point that very recently, about a week ago, before they attacked, they gathered around 105,000 troops that surrounded Karabakh with a population of 100,000, and they had a military of 10,000. So 105,000 troops surrounded 10,000 troops, and they brought so much weaponry that it was evident to me that they're going to attack. I of course didn't expect that they will end up cleansing the region, because I thought that
Mm,
Armenians will be able to fight back, and maybe it could be another 20, 30, or 40-day war. But it happened within 24 hours. As soon as Karabakh was attacked, Armenians fought hard, but then the government of Artsakh decided to surrender. So the whole war ended in less than 24 hours,
wow.
with the eventual outcome of all the Armenians leaving the region.
Yeah. And Grigor, just for people to know that you have a political and history background, is that correct?
Yes, correct. I have a master's degree in education from GCU and my political science degree from ASU. Many years ago, about 20 years ago, I was working for a congressman. I was interning, I was doing research on international relations, specifically former Soviet Union region and various terrorist networks that were operating there. And then I also interned at the Potomac Institute for Policy Studies at the International Center for Terrorism Studies, where I did research for a book that the director of the center was preparing, which was about the terrorist networks operating in the Caucasus and Central Asia and their connections to the terrorist networks in Middle East, specifically Al Qaeda. At that time, there was no ISIS, so Al Qaeda was the main thing. Taliban to some extent,
Right.
and other terrorist
Exactly.
groups, and how they were infiltrating all these regions and causing instability. Soon after that, I was working for John Hopkins University, Central Asia Caucasus Institute, where I wrote analytical articles about Armenia. I wrote there for some time, and then after a while, decided to write for myself. And so, after writing for them for some time, I decided to open my own site called araratinstitute.org, where I've been publishing my own analysis of the regional events
As a
related to
matter of fact,
Armenia.
I'm going to be quoting something from that. Thank you. Art actually sent that to us, and so not to cut you off, but let's get a reaction from Art and see what was your reaction, Art, about all that happened. Did you expect this to happen?
Well, I guess I did not expect it to happen, and maybe I don't have the day-to-day following of the situations going on in the greater Armenia area, but it struck home in the sense that we visited with our family in 2015, and we saw the enclave, and we met the people, and we saw the conditions that they were living in. In fact, the provisional government, or whatever you want to call it, was seemingly doing a lot for the local population there, providing housing, providing as much as they could, and given the fact that Nagorno-Karabakh or Artsakh was never recognized by any other country except the Republic of Armenia. And it was basically attached to Armenia with, you can call it a string, a highway that went from the Republic to the Nagorno-Karabakh region. So it was very tenuous right from the start. But the one thing we learned was when the area declared independence 30 years ago, there was very heroic fighting amongst the people to achieve that independence. We saw remnants of all of the things that happened. But even though you enter on the west side in a mountainous region, what happens in the east side of the country is it flattens out, and basically there are no natural protections from the rest of or the Azeri territories to the east of the country. And when we visited ancient ruins, we felt very concerned about gunfire or anything that could have happened right there, because everything was so open. So again, a little surprised, disappointed. After 30 years of a lot of progress in this enclave, the fact that Armenians have to give up historic lands that they've been living on before Christian times is devastating to me personally and the Armenian community in general.
Absolutely, absolutely. Mary, let's go to you. What is your reaction, knowing that the dissolution of a country and seeing your countrymen or your ancestral homeland on one of the areas where Armenians have existed almost forever is no longer, where they're all escaping and becoming basically refugees and escaping to Armenia? What's your reaction?
I'm heartbroken. I'm shocked, actually. I didn't think that this could happen again, a genocide all over again. I really thought that that we were safe. And yes, I visited Armenia, and I do see the people in the villages, and I really have a lot of empathy for them because of the conditions they are living in. But I really didn't think that this would happen. It's devastating. And I am not one that understands politics and why this sort of thing happens. I wish that people would be more Christian-like, and my deep-rooted faith and desire for peace that Armenians share. It's heart-wrenching to witness this, the suffering and tragedies caused by the conflicts like the one in Artsakh.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. Like I said, I am shocked, and recognizing the shared history of suffering between Assyrians and Armenians deepens our empathy for their resilience and the importance of acknowledging these atrocities. It's heartbreaking.
And it's taking all of my self-control not to get emotional, because I feel like I'm among family and who understand each other between the suffering. And I do want to share a video, and I'm sure you've seen this on the news. We share also the crime, the Assyrians and the Armenians. I call them siblings. I call them twin brothers or twin siblings, because what happens to one seems to be happening almost like a domino effect to the other. We share also the crime of ethnic cleansing in the past, not only 1915 genocide, as well as what we are witnessing with both the Assyrians and the Armenian history repeating. That's why we keep saying history repeating itself. ISIS, and of course, as Grigor mentioned, Al-Qaeda, and now with the end of the independence of Nagorno-Karabakh, Artsakh, ethnic cleansing, the sequence of events happening to both of our nations is not a coincidence. And if anybody tells me, oh, it's an accident here or this happened and that, I'm no longer will be convinced that they are coincidences. But I think it's part of the greater plan of ethnic cleansing, the process to purge us both. Because we are powerful Christians, there is a target on our backs. I believe that they are in line to purge us from our ancestral homeland. Last week, we did a report on the wedding fire in Baghdad, which is north of Iraq. We spoke with Mr. Nur Mete, the co-founder of Shlama Foundation, and I want to show a video. I know a lot of people are saying the investigation is over, but 1,000 Christian, Chaldean, Assyrian, Syriacs, whatever you want to call them, and there were even Armenians, by the way, probably there. A whole, and they were using flares for the wedding. You're going to tell me that that accident caused for 150 and counting, by the way, another about 7 or 8 people died. And I want to go to Grigor right after we see this video, because I know that you're going to share something about what happened in Artsakh to the military, which is so similar to this. And I'm tired of hearing excuses and saying this is an accident. Let's go ahead and look at this video.
سماوية كي ننال المكان الحسن في المتكئ الأخير فلنبارك اسم الرب إلهنا ونقدم له الشكر في جميع أوقاتنا.
I just don't understand. How is it that two nations as peaceful as someone who was the other day who said the Assyrians, the Chaldeans, the Christians in general, the Armenians don't even hurt an ant. We are peaceful people that actually want to live in peace with our neighbors. How is it that we are the ones suffering the most? Grigor, I know, share about the story that you told me about earlier when we were off camera about the military with the same kind of situation. A fire happened.
Yes, so there was a house where 15 Armenian soldiers were sleeping. It was on the border of Armenia and Azerbaijan in the northeast near Vartinis and Sotk. And what happened as these soldiers slept, all of a sudden there was a fire in the house. When the soldiers tried to escape, they couldn't because the door was locked from outside. Meaning it wasn't locked with a key for them to open, but something was holding from behind. And so as a result, 15 soldiers died because they couldn't get out of the house. And of course, the most likely scenario, considering that it was on the border with Azerbaijan, maybe about 500 to about 800 meters, very close. I personally suspect that it was a special operation by Azerbaijani soldiers who tried to kill the Armenians while they slept. And this is very similar tactic because if you remember, many years ago in Hungary, another Armenian soldier who was sleeping, he was beheaded by an Azerbaijani soldier, which happened in Hungary during a NATO training. Both Azerbaijanis and Armenians were present and other nations too. And in the middle of the night, an Azerbaijani soldier broke through the apartment door, approached the Armenian who was sleeping, and beheaded him while he was asleep. And so this was another incident of the sort where Armenian soldiers were sleeping and they got killed while asleep.
Oh my God. I mean, it's unbelievable how all of this destruction is happening to a nation that is not even able to defend themselves. Now, in the case of Armenia, I know that they have weapons and they were fighting an actual war. But I mean, during the fact that when there was ethnic cleansing in Turkey, and of course, it's almost like it's the same enemy, different day. And I just want to kind of mention to everyone the structure, the governmental structure of Karabakh, Artsakh, is the government is a unitary presidential republic. It has a president who is Samuel Shahramanyan, and then state minister Arthur Harutunyan. And I know that there is, and I know whoever wants to answer this question, Art, I don't know if you want to tackle this one, but I know there's a great deal of anger and unrest in Armenia right now, the country of Armenia itself, from the people who feel Armenia, the government, did not defend Artsakh militarily as it should. Did Armenia abandon Artsakh? And what was not done or done? What was done? I
Yes.
mean, what went on? Why didn't Armenia proactively support Artsakh?
Yes, what happened is that there was a military treaty between the Republic of Artsakh and Republic of Armenia. So it's
What
like
was that? I'm
similar.
sorry. There was
Imagine
what?
there was a military
Okay.
treaty
Yeah.
between Republic of Armenia and Republic of Artsakh. And according
Okay.
to that treaty, if Artsakh is attacked, Armenia was supposed to intervene. And for many years, Armenia was the guarantor of the security of the Artsakh Republic. And that is why in 3 years ago, when the war started in Artsakh, Armenia took part in it by sending Armenian troops and volunteers to defend Artsakh, the Armenians of Artsakh. But this time, which was very surprising, that despite the treaty that existed between the Republic of Artsakh and the Republic of Armenia, when Artsakh was attacked, the Armenian government, meaning the government in Armenia, decided not to intervene, and so they pretty much let the other Armenians in Artsakh to fight on their own. And considering that they had no chance of winning, as I mentioned, the war was over in less than 24 hours. The outcome was ethnic cleansing of Armenians from that region. And so there is a lot of anger in Armenia, among Armenian people as well as in diaspora, why the government in Armenia did not uphold the treaty that it had with Artsakh and did not intervene in the war. And the only excuse that the government has is that they did not want to have a regional conflict. They thought that if they intervene, it may explode and may become a big regional conflict involving Turkey and Iran. And so they decided not to intervene. So in essence, they left the Armenians, the minority, small group of Armenians, about 100,000 or so, in Artsakh to fight on their own. And of course, because the strength was not similar or same, Azerbaijan's were 10, 11 times more. In terms of military, maybe 20 times more in terms of military hardware. The Armenians in Artsakh couldn't defend themselves more than 24 hours. And what is
Wow.
interesting is that the soldiers did not surrender. It was the government that surrendered. They
Yeah, as
forced
of
the soldiers
January
to stop fighting.
1st, as of January 1st, it's dissolved. I mean, everything is
Yes.
dissolved.
Yes, and as
Wow.
of January 1st, according to the latest decree by the latest president of Artsakh, the Artsakh Republic would be dissolved. So all these events were kind of unexpected. As I mentioned, I expected that there would be a war, there would be attack, and I knew that it would be Artsakh that would be attacked, but I didn't expect that it will result in ethnic cleansing of the province and the Republic of Artsakh no longer existing.
That's really unbelievable. A little bit of a history of the Armenian church. As many of you know, that the Armenians are Christians, but like the Assyrians, they were not always Christians, but we did convert on the first century. The Assyrians and the Assyrians and the Armenians share that culture as well. We were both first century, and this is why I would have loved to have Father Zacharia on the program, because him and I we joke around about the fact that who was the first Christian. I say the Assyrians were, and he says no, the Armenians were. But history has recorded that Armenians are among the first converts to Christianity. The Assyrians and the Armenians, like twin siblings, as I mentioned earlier. What happens to one seems to follow on the other. We have a long history together before and after Christianity. Both the Assyrians and the Armenians belong to an apostolic church, and not in name only, but because our church were both established by the apostles themselves. Now, Art, do you want to tackle that one? Kind of give us a little bit of our faith and how far back that goes back, as far as the Armenian church goes back?
That's correct, Mona. And basically, in the early part of the 300s, the nation of Armenia became the first official country that was Christian. So, but Christianity existed in the area before that. And as you're totally right about the apostles being the ones to start converting the populations of both our nations to Christianity. So, hence the apostolic church.
Absolutely.
The Armenian church has been over time the reason or a main reason why Armenians have survived as a people, because in our case, the church and the people have always been essentially one over the years. So, and again, this is ethnic cleansing, but one of the issues of genocide is not only do you kill the people, but you also kill the culture. So in Artsakh specifically, there are structures that are so ancient. Some of the first Christian buildings, whether they be monasteries or churches, were built in the Artsakh area, and they're still there. I'm not sure what's going to happen to them. I happen to be an architect, so obviously I'm concerned about the culture itself and these structures because, again, as I said, that's part of the genocide where you kill the people, you kill the culture, you remove the people from their historic lands, and then you achieve what you wanted to. So this is, again, very devastating, and I'm not sure what the possibilities are of Armenians going back and inhabiting these ancient lands. There's another example, an unfortunate example of this in an area called Nakhichevan, which is again part of Azerbaijan, but historically that was Armenian lands, and you will find nothing there in terms of ruins or Armenians, and there they've achieved complete destruction. So my concern is the same for Karabakh, and
Yeah.
I keep using different names, but it's Karabakh and Artsakh are the
Yeah,
same.
and that's why I wanna do it justice and kind of call it by the names. I know it's Artsakh and it's Nagorno-Karabakh. But Mary, I wanted to ask you, being a Christian, and I know you and I are not politicians, and my heart goes out to the people. And I was reading somewhere where not many, there are many that actually were left behind in Artsakh now. They were not able to escape. There was a picture which broke my heart of a grandmother, of a nana, what we call a nana, that was being mocked by some of the soldiers. And it just broke my heart and it made me so angry. What do you say, or how do you think that as Christian, how does our faith right now, how do we cling to our faith? What do we do right now, seeing so much destruction, or you personally seeing so much destruction of not only the fact that they are your people, your blood people, nation, but overall, how does our faith come through for us in times like this?
Yes, deep prayer. We we are constantly praying, and we're constantly hoping for some type of deep-rooted faith and the desire for peace that the Armenians all share together, and that the longing for honesty, humility, and the end to the violence driven by greed. That sentiment that resonates with the people worldwide. That let's hope for a more peaceful and a just world where people can coexist harmoniously. This whole thing is all about greed, and I just all we can do is pray, and that's what all the Armenians do, and that's what the Christians believe in, and we're just hoping for answers. I don't know what to say.
Yeah,
It's
amen.
just heart wrenching.
And
I
sometimes when
wanna
we cannot, go ahead.
I wanna add, sorry, because I don't wanna get off the topic before you switch the topic. Speaking about Christianity and Artsakh, I've been to Artsakh several times doing various charity work there, and during one of my trips, I visited caves. There are caves in Artsakh that were used as churches before the Christianity became a state religion. That is going back to the first century. So Artsakh was already Christian. It already had the Christians in Artsakh, meaning Christian Armenians, in the first century. Because as you know, at that time, the Romans, they persecuted Christians. And so throughout the Middle East, Christians were turning caves into churches, and they were doing
Exactly.
their prayers inside the caves. And I found
Exactly.
such a cave, exactly like that cave in Artsakh, in
Yeah.
Askeran region. I went there and I saw these carvings, all these crosses and the altar. Everything was carved out. It's like the cave was turned into a church. And I read Armenian letters that were the letters of the Christians who were praying there in the old Armenian Grabar, that we say, not the modern Armenian, but in old Armenian.
Yeah.
And it was touching those walls and those crosses. It felt like I'm making contact with history, because
Mm.
what I see is what happened 2,000 years ago, right in the first century. Now, 2016, it was the last time that I went there, and that was 2014 when I went to that cave. So 2014 years forward, I visited a church that was used as a church by the
Yeah.
Christians of Artsakh. And touching that history and getting this vibe, these emotions, this connection, is just the overflow of energy, of love and care and belief. Like you feeling, like you don't have to speak, you're standing there and you feel how deep the Christianity was in the hearts and minds of Armenian people there. You just
Yeah.
feel it and you just become like part one with the essence. It's like God
Exactly.
was present in a sense,
Even
like the
if
God was present in the cave.
Even if humanity or mankind or the world society does not admit to it, the stones, the rocks, the artifacts speak louder than any language to say that the original ancestral homeland, people that are claiming that land, those caves that you speak about, and the faith
Mhm.
that we carried on our backs, and wherever we went, we had church. The Armenians,
Yes.
the Assyrians, the Christians that converted, that had the commitment of their faith, they took their faith with them, because he that lives in us was greater than he that was coming against us. And so there was nothing that could stop us from actually creating church wherever we were. And those caves were much history of why the Armenians have a claim to Nagorno-Karabakh, that we're not going to be able to go through all of that history. And I encourage people to look up the history, as there has been so much conflict and dispute, and people in Azerbaijan saying it's mine, as my sister Mary just said, it's all about greed rather than coexisting. It goes back and forth since the dissolution of the Soviet Union, of course, where both Armenia and Azerbaijan gained their independence. It's nothing about, rather than as neighbors live next to each other. Even when the war was won in 1992, 30 years ago, Karabakh remained alone and isolated and regionally from Armenia. And even though they had the pact where if they would be attacked, that Armenia would come. But unfortunately, that didn't happen in this case. And I want to, for those of you that don't know what's going on, and I know the media is not doing justice to this story, but I felt like it was necessary that all of you understand with this 5-minute clip of a video that we're about to show, to see what exactly happened and how we got here. So let's go ahead and watch this video, and we'll come back on the other side and discuss it some more.
In less than 24 hours, a conflict that had dragged on for over 35 long years, for which 2 wars had been fought, ended with just one night of heavy fire. Nagorno-Karabakh, the Armenian enclave inside the Azerbaijani territory, was effectively disarmed and forced to surrender in a manner that no one expected. Tens of thousands of people have died fighting for it. Peace plan after peace plan in the last 3 decades had ended in failure. But now, with the ethnic Armenian population leaving altogether, it is being widely believed that the conflict for Nagorno-Karabakh has ended for good. But old feuds have a way of resurfacing long after they are believed to be dead. But the larger question in the Caucasus is this: will peace now have a chance between Armenia and Azerbaijan, or will the old ethno-religious fault lines still continue to dictate the relations between the two neighbors? For over 3 decades, ever since Armenia and Azerbaijan became independent after the breakup of the Soviet Union, Baku and Yerevan have fought 2 major wars and several protracted low-intensity guerrilla conflicts. Make no mistake about this, the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict is both territorial and ethnic, with neither side willing to budge from their entrenched positions. But it has now ended with a lightning strike by Azerbaijan, catching Armenia and the rest of the world by complete surprise. On the 20th of September, Azerbaijan announced the beginning of its anti-terror operations in the enclave. Its stated objective was to make the Armenian forces in Karabakh to surrender. Videos put out by the Azerbaijan Defense Ministry will give you a glimpse of the pitched battles that were fought as the Azeri forces moved in. As reports of Azerbaijan's lightning offensive into Nagorno-Karabakh spread across Armenia, thousands of ethnic Armenians took to the streets in Yerevan. Condemning the lax approach of the Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, the Armenians tried to storm into the government buildings. But the Armenian forces were just not prepared to come to the rescue of the ethnic Armenian military in Karabakh. Questions were raised about the role of the Russian peacekeepers who were stationed in Karabakh to maintain order. Some angry Armenians crowded around the Russian embassy in Yerevan and tore off their Russian passports. But no help was forthcoming from any quarter. Azerbaijan's offensive inflicted many casualties. The Armenian forces in Karabakh were forced to surrender, with white flags unfurled on their armoured vehicles. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the offensive ended. Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev appeared on national television and claimed victory. He even assured the Armenians living in Nagorno-Karabakh that their safety and cultural rights would be respected.
5 days ago, we fully ensured and repaired our full sovereignty. As a result of anti-terrorism measures that were enacted within 24 hours, even less, the Armenian army that was illegally settled in Azerbaijan territory surrendered. It accepted our conditions, and thus Azerbaijan fully ensured the sovereignty of its own government. The people living in the Karabakh region are Azerbaijan citizens regardless of their nationality. Their safety, security and well-being will be ensured by the state of Azerbaijan.
But these words of assurances inspired little confidence amongst the Armenians. When Armenia had won the first Nagorno-Karabakh war in 1994, Azeris had been expelled from their homes, and the Armenians, fearing reprisals this time round, began to flee in long, unending convoy of vehicles winding through the mountains of Karabakh. The satellite images of the Armenians fleeing from Karabakh will give you a glimpse of the exodus. Azerbaijan even rounded up the Armenian leadership of Nagorno-Karabakh. Ruben Vardayan, who headed Karabakh's separatist government from November 2022 till February 2023, was paraded with handcuffs. The separatist leadership had claimed that Nagorno-Karabakh as a separate enclave would end by the end of this year. But from the exodus that is being witnessed, Armenian presence in Nagorno-Karabakh could end in a matter of days. At a time when the rest of the world was occupied with the meetings at the United Nations General Assembly and Russia's war in Ukraine, Azerbaijan, with one night of heavy bombings on Armenian positions, has changed the map of the Caucasus. But ethnic cleansing and redrawal of borders is not new to this region. When Armenia had won the first Nagorno-Karabakh war in 1994, it had expelled over 500,000 Azerbaijanis from Karabakh and the areas around it. And now, more than 100,000 ethnic Armenians are said to be fleeing from the mountains of Karabakh. But almost every single one of them says that they'll one day return again soon.
After having seen everything, it pains me to be leaving Nagorno-Karabakh. But I have hope that I'll be able to come back. In terms of wanting to stay in Nagorno-Karabakh, Nagorno-Karabakh is one of the paradises on earth that cannot be traded with or compared to islands or wealth. The world should not believe that we are willingly leaving Nagorno-Karabakh ever. We fought till the very end, with our blood, with our lives, to protect our country.
What a shame when you have Armenians living there forever being told that they're illegally occupying the land. What do you say to that, Grigor?
So I want to mention a few things, if you allow. So number one, in 1918, Republic of Armenia and Republic of Azerbaijan, they declared independence. League of Nations, which was predecessor of United Nations, recognized only Armenia as an independent republic because Azerbaijan was controlled by Turkish forces. And so when Armenia was recognized as an independent republic, it was recognized with Nakhichevan, with Artsakh, and also parts of Western Armenia, which is now modern Turkey. And so Azerbaijan had these claims to that region, to Artsakh and Nakhichevan, since then. And that is again connected to Turkey because I want to talk about pan-Turkism. As you know, in those times, 1800s, 1900s, there was this ideology of creating an Ottoman Empire that will expand from the Black Sea to the walls of China. So the entire Caucasus, entire Middle East, and including Central Asia. So the only country that stood on their way to achieving this dream was Armenia. And so, well, already then in those days, Azerbaijan was making claims to Armenian territories that were recognized internationally as Armenian. Artsakh, Nakhichevan, and parts of what we now call Western Armenia, which is part of modern Turkey. And of course, later in 1918, I'm sure you're familiar with the Treaty of Severs, according to which Armenia was recognized and its borders stretched to Black Sea because all those areas were populated densely by Armenians. Besides the historical fact, even at that time, they were majority Armenian. And so then in 1921, there was another treaty, Treaty of Kars and Treaty of Moscow between Russia and Turkey, which none of them was recognized as a country by the League of Nations. They were illegal countries from the legal perspective. They traded Armenia, they made deals between themselves at the expense of Armenia. And as a result of that, Armenia fell under Soviet occupation, Soviet or Russian occupation, under communist occupation. And it was a trade between Russia and Turkey that we're going to take over Caucasus, Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan. In return, you're going to get Western Armenia, and also Azerbaijan is going to get Karabakh and Nakhichevan. That's how the problem started because of this trade between two countries that were not even recognized as a country. So, two illegal entities made a deal at the expense of Armenian lives and Armenian lands, thus setting up the time bomb that went off in 1988. When in 1985, Gorbachev, a Soviet leader, said, "We want democracy, we want to bring up all the issues and resolve them. We want transparency." He called that glasnost, meaning openness. We want to talk about all the problems. Armenia said, "We have this problem. There is this Armenian territory that you gave to Azerbaijan. Will you please give it back? Because 80% of the territory population of Karabakh were Armenians, and 20% were Azerbaijani. But at that time, the Soviet Union did it. There would have not been any war. They could have issued a decree saying, okay, Karabakh is now part of Armenia. But they didn't. They said, no, it is part of Azerbaijan. And what resulted, that what caused as a result of that, Azerbaijanis got upset and they started killing Armenians in Baku, in the capital of Azerbaijan, in Sumgayit, in Kirovabad, which is Ganzak, a former Armenian name, and other regions. They began killing Armenians. And they began killing Armenians in Artsakh, specifically in Shamian region, in Stepanakert, in Shushi. There were pogroms and massacres of Armenians in 1988 and 1990. Soviet Union was not intervening to stop it. They will intervene late, 3 weeks late, 3 months late, 3 days late, but they will allow Azerbaijanis to kill Armenians. And that is when Armenians saw that they're not being protected by the Soviet Union and decided to take arms and fight for their independence. And that's how that fight in Artsakh became a conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Although Azerbaijan never declared war on Armenia, Armenia never declared war on Azerbaijan. So legally, they weren't fighting each other, but they were fighting each other in this province of Nagorno-Karabakh. Also, I want to mention that in the video, there was a wrong information. They said 500,000 Azerbaijanis left Karabakh. That is not
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
500,000 was the total population of people in Karabakh. 80% of 500,000 were Armenians, and then 20% were Azerbaijanis. But what happened is that from Azerbaijan, about 400,000 Armenians had to leave because they were getting killed, and local and state and federal authorities were not defending them. So we had about 450,000 refugees in 1988, 1989, 1990 coming to Armenia. And then Azerbaijanis began leaving Armenia. But unlike what was happening to Armenians, Armenians were not doing massacres of Azerbaijanis in Armenia. They were allowed to sell their homes and they were allowed to live peacefully. Nobody forced them out. They left because the war started.
It wasn't a purge. It wasn't a
Yes,
purge of Azerbaijanis.
yeah, just the situation escalated. They didn't feel comfortable and they left. There was no massacre, in Yerevan or any other cities or towns. And so once that happened, then of course the war ensued. And so the war was fought for 6 years until 1994, where the war stopped with a ceasefire. And of course, now fast forward 30 and some years, and now we're losing the region that we fought for. During 1988-1994 war, Armenians lost about 15,000 people, about 10,000 soldiers, about 5,000 civilians, and Azerbaijanis lost about 20,000. And then, of course, during 2020 war, where Azerbaijan attacked Karabakh, and not only Artsakh, but also Armenia. It attacked all the border regions, towns, and villages in the Republic of Armenia, and Russia didn't intervene, which was very surprising because Armenia had treaties with Russia that they need to be defended if they're attacked by Azerbaijan or Turkey. Armenia
And they didn't do
attacked.
anything, and they just stood back and watched it.
Correct. In fact, they withdrew 4 hours, 2 hours in some areas before the attack, which means they knew that the attack is coming. They just left their positions, and then Armenia was attacked, and the Karabakh was attacked. And what is common denominator is that in all cases Armenians were massacred. When I say massacred, I mean burned alive. They were decapitated. They were cut into pieces. They were raped, not only women but also children. It was very similar to what was ISIS doing to Christian minorities in Middle East.
Exactly, and the Yazidis. We need to mention also what they were doing to the Christians and the Yazidis. So as we just watched this, we watched this video, it was reported that the Azerbaijani authorities had taken control of the city with almost the entire Armenian population having fled, and I need to say that, having fled to Armenia ahead of their advancing forces. This is much, much more different than when you have people just leaving, as you were saying, being given the opportunity to pick up and leave, and not just leave with the clothes on their back, as this young lady in the video that was just saying that we are not leaving because we want to, we're being forced out. But did you notice in this video, the president of Azerbaijan is sitting next to none other than Erdogan, the president of Turkey, who said there is nothing to worry about. Who was saying this, if you're ethnic Armenian, there's nothing, you're still a citizen of Artsakh, and there's nothing to worry and there's no need to flee. However, this is what the thugs and the people in the street and the army in the streets were doing. And I want to show you a video of what people were escaping. And this is where I'm so glad, Grigor, that you are setting the record straight, is because what comes out of their mouth and what happens next, or what the actions are totally different. And the history that is being rewritten and what they are speaking about has no roots no factual. It's not a factual historical event that has happened. So I want to show you what the Armenians are escaping. Let's go ahead and watch this video real quick.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر لله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله والله أكبر الله أكبر لله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله والله أكبر الله أكبر لله الحمد سبحان الله.
Sağ ol komandir.
The desecration and the disrespect of where their cross would be. Now, if you had respect, if the president was saying, "Oh, you have nothing to fear," and yet you have a church where where you have a church where the cross was removed and the man is standing there reciting his takbir, and the greatest insult that you can give anyone. Mary, I want to just get your reaction. Just seeing that video, I don't know if you've seen it, but what do you feel seeing that right now?
You know, the troubling historical parallels with Turkey's involvement underscore the need for international efforts to prevent further suffering in the region. And we must remain hopeful and support efforts to rebuild and heal, drawing strength from the lessons of resilience. And keep praying.
Keep praying. Keep praying. I know. I'm with you, sister. Keep praying, because exactly
what they deserve. I just, it's hard to believe this is happening.
Yeah. Art, what's your reaction?
Again, it's like we're saying history repeating itself. It's not history repeating itself. It's something that's just continuing. And you know, part of the Armenian genocide started as early as the 1890s. We talk often about 1915, but this has been going on for close to 140 years or so, and it's just a bit of an endless tragedy. There is no real reason why Armenians and their neighbors shouldn't get along. Everybody has the right to believe in God and believe in God the way they feel is best. Obviously, as Christians, we want to believe in God in the Christian way, and the Christian way is through love and not hatred and destruction. So when I pray, that's what I pray for. But unfortunately, the people that think that their religion or their culture is superior to another one will not agree to that, and this becomes 100+ year war where you have times of the semblance of peace, and then you have times of this kind of destruction. So
and forcing people that have stayed behind to integrate, either they like it or not, like those people that were not able to leave Artsakh. Then what?
And unfortunately, those are the elderly, as you stated earlier, and they're the most vulnerable of all people.
Yeah.
I want to add, if I may.
Sure.
So a few things. The Azerbaijanis were not only fighting against churches, they were fighting against dead people. Because throughout the wars in 1980, 1994, later 2020, and more recently, they destroyed graves, they dug up people who were buried, and they thrown their remnants all over the place. And in some cases, they were playing soccer with a dead person's skull. Like, you just imagine the depravity of somebody doing that. So they were not just fighting the Armenians who were fighting. They weren't just killing Armenians who were asleep. They weren't just killing and raping and murdering elderly women and children, but they were also desecrating Armenian cemeteries and the dead. Like how depraved one can be in order to fight or show brutality toward a dead person. Like there is remnants of the person, and you're playing soccer with that person's skull. It's just
what is that? Well, I mean, the person is dead. Why are you unearthing?
It's hatred, and again, it's destruction of culture, and it's destruction of everything that would have been Armenian, including dead Armenians.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, and you know, to talk about Turkey in the news right now, Turkey carries out fresh wave of airstrikes in Iraq and Syria after PKK attack. Turkey is very well alive. The Ottoman Empire is very well alive and active. As you said, Art, this is not a matter of the genocide that happened in 1915, history repeating itself. It is a continuation. It never stopped. Its tentacles, Turkey's tentacles are everywhere, as you saw Erdogan sitting there quietly. This is a proxy war. Yeah, he's wishing he can touch Armenia once again and to destroy them once and for all. Now, I wanted to show the websites, Fred, if we could please, the websites to St. Apkar Church, where people can actually get in touch. Of course, St. Apkar is in Scottsdale, Arizona. We're so fortunate to have them here. As you can see, all three, Art, Grigor, and Mary are council members. And if you want to get in touch or find out a little more or a lot more about the Armenian faith, the Armenian people, I know they have, every year they have Armenian festivals and food. I've been to many of them. I've worshiped with them. Of course, we've worshiped together. And then, so that's one website. You can just, of course, there's the QR code where you can point your camera. And there's another website of the overall, the Western Diocese of the Armenian Church, the overall Armenian Diocese. If you wanted to find out a lot more, as Art mentioned earlier, just like with the Assyrians, again, I'm telling you, we're twin siblings. Just like the Armenian Church saved the Armenians and became sort of like the safe haven and the roof over our heads, so did the Assyrians. If it wasn't for the church, we wouldn't have survived. And we have similarities in that respect as well. And I wanted to also share the fact that none other than Congresswomen, and I know that we want people to get in touch with their officials and to let them know. But in the meantime, Representative Congresswoman Anna Isho of California, who, by the way, happens to be a Democrat who picks and chooses, and this is my opinion, has nothing to do, it doesn't reflect the opinions of my panel today, but I seem to think that she chooses and she picks and chooses the causes that she advocates for some reason. She herself being Ishu, by the way, is an Assyrian name. Her mother's Armenian, her father's Assyrian, but like I said, she picks and chooses, I don't know why, is rallying support for the Armenian ethnic genocide, the ethnic cleansing that's happening in what they're calling Azerbaijan, really, but it's Artsakh, pushing the administration to sanction them. I hope to God that this does happen, where it says, congressional pressure on the Biden administration to add U.S. complicity in Azerbaijan's ethnic cleansing of Artsakh. 120,000 indigenous Armenian Christians increased this week, with 75 U.S. House members calling on the administration to impose sanctions on Azerbaijan and enforce Sanctions 907 restriction on U.S. military aid to the genocide Aliyev regime, reported the Armenian National Committee of America, ANCA. Now, I know that you're more inclined with the politics and with the history, Grigor. Do you think this can make a difference? And will sanctioning Azerbaijan give hope to, and I'm not even going to ask the question of will the ethnic cleansing end, or will the Armenians return if something is done and these sanctions does go forward?
I want to mention, like before I come to this question, to the previous one, like you said, this is not a new genocide, this is a continuation of the genocide. In 2020, when Azerbaijan won the war again, they had a military parade in Baku where Erdogan recited a poem dedicated to Enver Pasha, who was one of the perpetrators of the Armenian, Greek, and Assyrian genocides. During this most recent attack, Azerbaijani soldiers, they were carrying badges with a picture of Enver Pasha. And on it, in Turkish, it was written, "Armenians don't run or you will die tired." So this is just a proof that it's not something new. It is something that they're continuing, that they started over 100 years ago. So it's a genocide that is ongoing for more than 100 years. And granted, for us, for people in general, and for the countries, for the people to stop such things from happening, people who engage in genocide, ethnic cleansing, massacres, they need to be held accountable. The countries need to be held accountable, such as Azerbaijan and Turkey. Sanctions will help to some extent, but that is not sufficient. There needs to be a trial in Hague for war crimes and genocide, where both Erdogan and Aliyev should be tried and punished, just like Milosevic of Yugoslavia, who was accused of genocide and then tried and put in prison for his crimes. Similarly, uh, Erdogan and Aliyev, they also war criminals. They're also genocide perpetrators. And sanctions is not enough. They need to be put on trial. They need to go to prison. They need to be held accountable for what they've done to Armenians in the past 30 or so years. So
And
sanction
that
is a
is,
good start, but it's not enough. There needs to be
it's
more
not
done.
enough. You're absolutely right. What will it take? Do you think this situation can be turned around? Do you think there is hope that the Armenian people can come back?
And not as long as it is under Azerbaijani Turkish occupation. I want
Hmm.
to mention that it's not just Azerbaijani troops that attacked Armenians in Artsakh, but also Turkish troops. There are Turkish troops, over 5,000 of them, who are present in Artsakh. There is a Russian Turkish center in Artsakh where they're monitoring the situation. In a sense, they're the ones who pretty much plan out this war. It wasn't just Turkey and Azerbaijan, Russia was involved as well because they didn't do anything to stop it. They did not intervene. They did not prevent from stopping. When Artsakh was put into blockade with the checkpoint that closed the Lachin corridor, the Berzo corridor, it was part of Russian duties of Russian peacekeepers to keep it open. And so when it was closed, they were supposed to open it. First, not allowed to be closed. Second, when it was closed, open it. They did not prevent it from closing, and they didn't do anything to open it.
And
And
they
then
starved the Armenian people. They starved them.
yes, for over 9 months, Armenians they starved. Nothing went in. No medication, no food, no fuel, no nothing that will go. Every day before that, about 200 trucks will go back and forth between Republic of Armenia and Republic of Artsakh every
Mm.
day. 200 big trucks, those 16 wheelers.
Wow.
For 9 months, imagine nothing went in, nothing came out. And then when this genocide took place, Russia stood aside, just watched. They actually made photos and videos of what is happening. They did not
Wow.
intervene to stop it in any way. And then, of course, as I mentioned, it wasn't just an Azerbaijani operation, it was Azerbaijani, Turkish, Russian operation. Because both Russia and Turkey, they want to revive their old empires. Russia wants to revive Russian Empire, Soviet Union 2.0. Erdogan
Hmm.
wants to revive his own empire of Ottoman Empire,
I don't
and
know.
he wants to go to China. So we have two leaders who are psychopaths in a way that they wouldn't stop at anything, including engaging in a genocide to achieve
Hmm.
their goals of reviving these brutal empires that have caused millions of deaths for their for the duration of their existence. Millions of people
Yeah.
died because of these empires, and they want to revive them.
And so the enemy might have tried. I always say this: the enemy might have tried, but they didn't succeed. Because with God, everything is possible, and this is why we are, as Armenians and Assyrians, sitting on this program right now, raising our voices. And my last question, really a question, other than just to have some closing thoughts: will we survive? I ask myself all the time: will we survive from being far away from our ancestral homeland? And this question is for all three of you. Let's start with you, Mary. Will the Armenians survive being away from their ancestral homeland, keeping our culture, keeping our language, keeping our heritage?
Absolutely. We always do. We are very strong and we will come together and we will beat this. We always have and will. We will survive.
Amen. Art?
I think that survival is related to success and related to our own willingness to survive. We must be, especially here in America, strong American citizens integrated within our society in this wonderful land that we live in. But we must always also remain ethnically who we are, and we must make sure that our children and our grandchildren know who they are as well, even as they are loyal and good citizens of America. So, but it is up to us. We are not to rely on anyone else to say to us that we are Assyrian or we're Armenian. And I just want to add to your quick note about us being siblings. Not only that, there are many Syrian Armenian families. So these two communities are linked through marriage and family as well.
Absolutely.
So it's the bonds are very strong amongst us. But again, I think as as very small minorities, it is also very good that we support one another too, because we can't
Absolutely.
rely on the bigger powers. We can't rely on people or groups that are beyond kind of our control or influence. We don't have oil. We don't have a fortune that lies behind us for people to support us for as Mary said, reasons of greed. So again,
Yeah,
it's
Can
up
I say
to us.
one thing?
We must survive.
absolutely. Go ahead, Mary.
I have to say this in these challenging times, the preservation of our culture and faith is more important than ever. So we hope to see you at our festival on November 4th and 5th, all of you.
Absolutely. And this coming weekend, actually, it's is the Assyrian festival at St.
Oh.
Peter's. Yeah. So we'd love to see you there as well, for all of them that wants to taste the food, learn about the culture, come dance with us, come sing with us. The enemy might be trying, but you know what? We're still going to be dancing. And like Grigor says,
Yes.
you can unearth our dead, but they're in heaven with Jesus. And so whatever you do with their bodies here, you can play soccer with whatever you want to play soccer with. The fact of the matter is we have eternal life, and our hope is in Jesus. And Jesus said, he that believes in me will never die. And so we remain faithful, and we remain alive. And Grigor, I don't want to, I don't want you to lose out on your thoughts on, will we survive? I know what the answer is, but what is your reaction to that? Will we survive?
With God wills, we will, because Armenians, Assyrians, we've been around for thousands of years, since the time of Noah. Like, we've seen worse, right? We've seen Persian Empire, Roman Empire, Arab Caliphate, a bunch of other empires that were maybe
Yeah.
as bad as this. But we have survived nonetheless because of our faith, because of our culture, because of our language, and because we value what we have. Enemy may have oil, but we have identity. We have culture, we have history, we have religion. So we will survive with God's will, just like we have survived for thousands of years. We will outlast them. The question is, will Turkey survive? Will Azerbaijan survive? Like, as nations, we will survive. But countries like that, if history is any example for us, no country like that is going to last forever. Think of ancient kingdoms that no longer exist because of the things that they did, similar to this one. Or even remember Sodom and Gomorrah, how the cities were destroyed, right?
Yes.
Despite that they were well developed, well populated, but because of the sins and the things that they've done, God destroyed them. And I believe that if there is no repentance and repentance and askness, request to forgive sins on behalf of Turkey and Azerbaijan, God will destroy Turkey and Azerbaijan also. It's just a matter of time.
And it's just in God's plan, because they may have a plan of destruction, but God has a plan of maybe rerouting us. I truly believe that a lot of times when ISIS came into Mosul, and Mosul was one of those strongholds that was completely Christian, and a lot of people said, all other people were purged. I said, no, it was all about the Christians, because there were Christians there from the beginning of time, ringing the bells of the church that no longer rang. And today, as you see, Mosul, also a Christian city, remains desolate and destroyed, because God will not build on the destroyers. God will not help the destroyers, and he will keep the survivors. And Art, you said it so beautifully. Survival is in fact in itself a victory. With God, all things are possible. The Assyrians and the Armenians have a powerful God that has and will always come through for us. God always raises people in the world at the most crucial time to help aid, to give us hope. As Mary was saying, we need to have hope, to give us hope of his promise that he will never leave us nor forsake us. And I want to show two videos back to back. One of them is of Mel Gibson, and the other one will allow you to kind of look at. But Mel Gibson was moved enough to mention the Armenians and gave this message to us all.
History tragically repeats itself as we witness the modern-day genocide unfolding. Yet the media's silence on this issue is deafening. The Armenian people, who've endured centuries of persecution due to their faith, find themselves once again subjected to a brutal campaign of ethnic cleansing. In the grip of Azerbaijan and Turkey, countless Armenians are enduring unspeakable horrors: loss of life, forced displacement, starvation, and isolation from essential supplies. These are the same Armenians whose roots run deep in a land they've called home for generations. I implore the international community across all nations to take swift action, extend a helping hand to the Armenian population, offer them the protection they desperately need, and create a humanitarian corridor for their safe passage. Most importantly, let's engage in immediate diplomatic efforts to ensure that these exiled individuals can return to their rightful homes without delay. To the Armenian people who still suffer, I say, don't lose heart. God is with you.
And we want to show the other video as well, if we can go to it.
I first heard about Armenia from my good friend Amy. Her dad is an American war correspondent. This guy's a legend. He travels all over the world to wars and disasters making television. And so in 2020, when Azerbaijan suddenly attacked the Armenian territory of Artsakh, Chuck was there.
This is what's left of the rocket that destroyed this hospital. I didn't know anything about Armenia or Artsakh until one of my viewers contacted me in late 2020 and told me about the conflict that was going on there. I was kind of surprised by it, but when she taught me a little about what was happening and about the history between Armenia and Azerbaijan, I realized that this is actually something that I needed to cover.
There was a Republic of Armenia and a Republic of Azerbaijan. And Stalin, to create a tension between and kind of a leverage that situation, gave a piece of Armenian land called Artsakh, and it's Nagorno-Karabakh everywhere else in the world, but we call it Artsakh, to Azerbaijan. Throughout its history, it's been majority Armenian population, which are Christian Armenians.
My beat as a war correspondent is wars and disasters around the world, but I very often like to focus on things that are of interest to the Christian population around the world because I work for CBN News, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
Between 1915 and 1923, there were about 1.5 million Armenians that were killed and expelled from Turkey. At the end of that episode, the Soviet Union kind of came in and brokered several interesting deals where Armenians could live under Soviet rule under certain conditions. And in 1988, I was 10 years old. And the people of Artsakh democratically tried to secede and held a referendum. People in Azerbaijan of Armenian descent started getting murdered.
It's unbelievable. Like I said, I mean, people were raising, I mean, they may think that they purge us from our ancestral homeland and we leave and they think we're going to go quietly. They don't know that it is at that time that we become more courageous and more loud. Now, before we go, I do want to mention, and there is a picture that I want to share. I found this on Twitter, Yazidis. It's spelled two different ways with a Y and E. This post said as the following, and if we can show, this is actually Hamushero or Ammushero. It says, as we remember the innocent victims of the genocide of 1915 who were subjected to a genocide for being Christians only, we also remember the heroic Hamushero. As a Yazidi tribal leader, he rescued more than 20,000 Christians who were fleeing the genocide. When the Ottomans sent messengers with a letter to demand that the Christians be handed over, Hamushero refused. He tore up the letter and sent the messengers back naked. He tore up the letter and sent the messengers back naked, choosing instead to protect the fleeing Armenians and Assyrians. That's the kind of people God raises up. And if it wasn't for those one man that saved to almost 20,000 people, that's the kind of power, that's the kind of miracle that is on our lives. And this is what we are proud of, and we want to praise God today as we join together to say, in the name of Jesus, God's plan will succeed, and the enemy has already been won over. Amen?
Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you so much. I know that we are going to be ending the program with the last video, if that's true. Correct, Fred? Yeah, we've got one last video. I want to thank all of you. You guys are my heroes. Art, you know, I've known you for a long time. You've added a brother and a sister to the list of people that I love and I think of as heroes. Grigor, Art, and Mary, thank you so much for being on the program. Father Zacharia, we missed you here. We hope to have you on maybe better news the next time that we talk. We want to hear that God's purpose and plan is advancing rather than the enemy's plan of destruction. But I want to thank you. We bless you with everything, and may God protect you and guide you. Thank you for being on the program today.
Thank you very much, Mona.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. We leave you with Shlama, as we normally do. We love you. Until the next time, Shlama. Very honored to be here. We're going to be covering it. It's a summit that's going to take place for the next 4 days.